Alright, so it's been a few weeks since my last video, and in that time, in that free time I've had, I've actually been playing a lot of the first Descendant. So I have about 160 hours into the game so far, and well, the game is enjoyably mid. And it's probably weird kind of hearing that and saying that about a game that I do enjoy. Overall, I think this game does a lot of things pretty good, and a lot of things that are just like, alright. But I don't think there's really anything that just super stands out. Overall, I don't think this game has found its defining identity yet. I mean, yeah, sure, we do have like a lot of ass, which is great. I can get behind that. But given this is a Lost Ark focused channel, let's switch over to that. Lost Ark is a game that is heavily defined by its raiding experience and also its class experience because they kind of had to go one-to-one with each other. Those are things about the game that stand out to the point that people will put up with things they dislike. All the horrible dog shit systems in the game, people deal with those because the other two things are just that good. And gameplay wise, I don't think the first Descendant has that standout feature yet. But again, talking about Lost Ark, it took Lost Ark years and to upgrade to Season 3 for it to have that identity, and it was just a dying game until then. So to not launch with kind of that identity, that like super selling feature, I don't think is a death sentence to the game, but it's something that it has a chance of developing over time. So to really summarize the first Descendant, it's just an online looter shooter. As somebody who has played a lot of Borderlands in the past, that's what I think about the most. A lot of other people do compare the game to Destiny and Warframe, which are two games I don't have that many hours into. But it does seem like Warframes is one of the bigger inspirations, as the module system is one of the things that I often hear that's compared to Warframe, where you have modules you put in slots to upgrade your character and weapon. But overall, yeah, it's just a really simple game. Yes, there's a story, but after that, you just kind of just farm guns, characters, upgrades, modules. It is a grind session farmer game. Right now, as the time of launch, the gameplay loop of the game is pretty simple. There are drops known as amorphous materials. You can get these by doing dungeons or certain bosses out in the world. These materials are linked to other bosses or other content in the game to unlock them and open up and get your loot. There's like currently 200 or so amorphous materials, and each one of them has 5 drops inside of them. So it is an RNG of the 5 slots. Everyone is weighted to its own percentage. So as of right now, there's really 3 things that you'll see players doing this game. The first thing a lot of people are going to be doing is either spamming a certain mission or doing a thing called special operations, which can be something like a defense mission. People are usually doing these to farm XP, gold, and Kuiper, which is used for upgrading. And while special operations do have amorphous materials linked to them, people generally don't do it for that because they are just a more time consuming way to get that drop. Which leads us to the other 2 loops that people are going to be doing. The first being that you do dungeons and void interceptions, as you do the dungeon for the amorphous drop and then you do the boss link to it to open up the amorphous material. It's very straightforward, and I should also mention that the dungeons and the bosses, they do have loot drops outside of it, which is going to be modules and accessories, or I guess in this game we call them equipment. And then we have the other loop, which is void missions, and I'm going to be honest, this is what I dislike about the game the most. I do not find this loop to be nearly anywhere near as enjoyable as anything else. So it's really a 3-step mission. The first step is to get the amorphous materials, which you do get off a void reactor mission. And while on the surface this seems like a quick mission to do, however, it is actually pretty tedious and annoying. So you have 3 to 4 reactors in there, you destroy it and you spawn the boss, you kill the boss. However, there are some materials that you can only get by doing it stealth, so you have to destroy all those reactors stealth and then kill the boss. There is only one Descendant that can stealth, so that means you have to farm that one Descendant and get her done, and then you have to play that character. It's just how it is. And of course, it's not a guaranteed drop, so you could be spending a lot of time doing this playing a character that you don't actually want to play. But once you get that amorphous material, you can't just go kill the boss for it now. Because the void missions that you do it, you actually need void crystals. There are various missions in the world that are linked to starting it by shooting it with a specific element, which we have fire, ice, non-attribute, lightning, and corrosive, I believe that's all of them. So you need to know which one of the 6 void crystals you need for that mission, which it does say on the mission itself. Then you got to go farm the void crystals. Something I really enjoy about this game, something I really like about the design is there's usually multiple things you're gaining out of doing one activity. Like there might be one main chase item you're getting, but you're always still getting a little bit of something else on the side that has value. So then once you finally have the amorphous material from the reactor and the void crystals from the void missions, then you can go fight the void boss and roll that loot. Though I should mention that none of the other gameplay loops are perfect either by any means. There are going to be a lot of missions where you're standing there doing a fence or walking a drone. I hate that drone so much. Or you're just waiting for mobs to trickle in one by one. Like, it's not perfect design. Like, the grind itself is pretty good, but some of the missions are just, they need some tuning. And I guess real quick, I should talk about the bosses and their kind of variety, or lack of, I should say. Like out in the world and out in dungeons, there's basically 2 types of bosses you're going to see. Well, kind of 3, I guess. There's going to be boss type 1 where they spawn orbs in the air and you just kill the orbs when it goes immune, and then you can kill the boss again. Boss type number 2 is they spawn mobs that you have to kill before you can kill the boss again. Type number 3 is a robot that spawns a shield around it that has bits on it that get destroyed before you can hurt the boss again. There is quite a bit of a lack variety right now. And with the big boss, the big raid bosses, the void interception battles, that's kind of similar to a sense. Like overall, there's about 3 different body types if we want to count the hanged man, where you got like the 2-legged boss and we got the big boss with 8 legs. Each type has weak points in pretty much the similar same spots. And while they do have a lot of the same moveset, all of them generally have one major gimmick that sets them apart. So while you're not always fighting the same boss, there's just a lot of similarities in just the world bosses and the void battles. So I think the farm itself is actually pretty good. A lot of the things do have multiple drop sources of it. Yes, there are some that are limited to only normal mode or only one mission. Those kind of suck. But overall, I would say, unlike a game that I mentioned earlier, Borderlands, most bosses have multiple chase items, and this is really good for group play. See, back when I was playing Borderlands with the boys, we never played the same characters with each other, so we always had different chase items, and bosses often only had a single chase item. So most of the time, when you wanted to farm something to play with the boys, you would actually be farming things solo because they would have no need for whatever you're doing. But in this game, since every kind of gameplay loop has, 2 amorphous materials to the boss, whatever you need to open, there's usually something worth of value. And I'm pretty sure every amorphous material in the game has one of the 2 major chase items that are pretty much eternal, which are the activators and the catalyst, as the activators increase your module limit, like how many points you can put into there, while the catalyst will allow you to assign a slot a certain type, and then that will reduce that type in that slot to half cost. So you're going to need an activator for every character and every weapon that you actually want to juice up, and then you're going to need a catalyst for probably most of your slots. But yeah, overall, the farm's not that bad. I've honestly had worse experience trying to farm 20% than I do 3%. Which, on a similar topic, I do think there is a lot of room for variety in builds in the game. I do think a lot of the characters have a lot of potential, and I do think a lot of the weapons have the potential too. It's just that right now, as we're in the discovery phase, a lot of people are latching onto very popular weapons and characters because, well, they do good for content. So even though you can find like 20 Glay videos for builds, they're pretty much 90% the same thing right now. Which, well, on the topic of builds, let's just address Ultimate Descendants right now. I think how Ultimate Descendants are implemented right now are not great. So you have the normie version and then you have the Ultimate version. Obviously, the Ultimate version is going to be either you're going to pay with a lot of money or you're going to pay with a lot of time to get. Every Ultimate we've seen so far has higher base defensive stats. And then the only other real permanent big difference is the fact that there are Ultimate class Transcendence modules. And as of right now, they are generally best in slot. But it's how they're implemented, like I said, that sours me. Simply put, Ultimates are a separate character, so this deters people from investing into the normal variants. It makes it hard for people to want to invest in the catalyst and activators to put into a character that is just a normal version. I wish how it worked is that you can upgrade a normal character to an Ultimate version. There is no reason to even play the normal Descendant after you unlock the Ultimate. It's just right now, if people want to play the characters that aren't one of the 4 that have ultimates, they have to invest into the non-ultimate version. So yeah, that's kind of whack. There is, however, one thing I dislike about the grind, which is that a lot of things you only need one of. So for characters, for example, you only need one of that item. And when that one item is a 32% drop of something that you're trying to farm that has a 6% drop, for example, it's pretty annoying to constantly get that. Moxie actually brought up the idea of being able to turn that excess into stabilizers, which would increase the drop rate on the lower chance ones. I think that would be a great way to do it. I don't think like a full pity system would be good for this type of game, but having it go up to, if you haven't gotten it, have it go up to say 32%, I think that would also be a good way of handling things. But overall, I just think there needs to be something to kind of get rid of the excess because, people are just sitting on a ton of character codes that they don't need. And it's pretty depressing to just see a ton of them in your inventory or just get that opened every time. So I should probably take a moment to talk about the cash shop. Now, as somebody who played Vindictus, a lot of Vindictus in the past, I had zero hope for this game as far as cash shop goes. My assumption going into this game is that this is going to be pay to win trash that I'm going to quit in 2 weeks. But I'm going to have a fun 2 weeks until then. And to my surprise, while the prices on the cash shop it's horrible, it is pretty miserable. The overall contents in it, it's actually not that bad. There is no power exclusive to the cash shop. What is exclusive to the cash shop is cosmetics, costumes, hairstyles, makeup, dyes. Dyes is pretty egregious. Unfortunately, there is a battle pass. Yes, it's pretty stinky. It's like 10 bucks and you only get about 5 bucks refunded to you in crystals. So that means that every 3 months, if you want to keep up with the battle pass, you're going to have to throw in another $5. Battle passes suck, but I've seen worse, and let's be honest, they're just not going to go anywhere. But yeah, overall, I expected it to be so much worse. And since we're on the topic, let's continue to talk about Nexon. This is not a game I would have expected to have weekly hotfixes and updates that actually address what the players have been talking about. It is just overall shocking. It is surprising to me that they are actually listening to the player base and responding. So some examples. Initially, hard mode did not have matchmaking, which means you had to make your own party to do the content. People didn't like that, so they just added matchmaking into hard mode like a week later. There are some farms in this game that people didn't like precision breakers, which is, I didn't talk about it, but it was kind of annoying. So they upped the drop rates on those, but also they added the rewards that you get out of doing that farm to other parts of the game. They are in the process of addressing void reactors and that, like they added void crystals to special operations. However, currently it's not enough to really offset anything. So hopefully people will still continue to be upset about that kind of farm and then they'll further change it. But on top of it, they're actually actively banning people who cheat or abuse systems. They actually have a list of the names out there, which is pretty nice. That's something I always advocate for. And a great thing is, again, I'm going to bring up Borderlands again because looter shooter. They're not nerfing characters. They are not saying, hey, your build is too strong, let's nerf it. They're saying, hey, there's other builds out there, just try to find them. So overall, this has been a wild experience. This doesn't feel like it's the same company that I've played games of before. This feels like something that's not Nexon. And personally, I hope this is how Nexon moves forward. I think, Vindictus and MapleStory, maybe they're a bit too far off the deep end to be saved, but hopefully just this is the future for it. And with all this combined is how I really came to this conclusion that this game is enjoyably mid. It is a very grindy game with no huge standout features as of yet. However, this is a grind that for the past 2.5 years, I really missed. And I'm gonna have to bring up Lost Ark one more time, is that I'm sick of the grind of having these set dailies that I have to do every day that feel like a chore more than something I want to do. These are the things that you have to do to enjoy those raids and the classes to their full extent to the end game. You're going to have to do all these tedious dailies and deal with systems that I don't like. When I boot up first Descendant, it's, hey, what do I want to farm today? And even if I am chasing low percentage drops, generally I'm getting something else of value even if I'm not getting exactly what I'm chasing. And yes, there are dailies in the game that you pretty much get done without even looking at them. And there is, yes, the battle pass to kind of help keep you on the treadmill, but that's it. In this game, I don't really feel any FOMO to play at all. Like if I don't play for a day or a week, there's no FOMO. What little dailies there are in the battle pass, they don't really keep you on the treadmill. The only thing that really has any real sense of FOMO is if you buy the EXP Kuiper Gold Boost, because they are a 30% boost for a set period of time. But I'm going to be honest, I haven't really had a need for those. Like there are times where I'm a little low on Kuiper and Gold and I just do a Kuiper Gold farm missions for a little bit instead. But it might be because my shit RNG, but at the rate I farm things, I'm still getting gold and Kuiper and materials at a pretty good rate as I'm getting while I'm farming it. Like I am getting a good chunk of materials to support me going on as I'm doing the farm itself without actually doing any dedicated farming. It's only really when I get lucky on drops, I'm like, hey, now I kind of need a little extra gold. And that's really about it. That's all I got to say for now after my first 160 hours in the first Descendant. With that being said, thanks for watching, like, sub, and I'll catch you next time.